society, and people are just getting together. And, this is just a general thing. We will try to memorialize this by making these videos.
Now that you're seated, you're not seated yet. Now that you're seated, would you please stand for the Pledge of
The flag, as usual, is to the right of the speaker's table. And there it is. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Joanne will now lead.
Almighty and everlasting God, welcome into our gathering tonight, that we can give you thanks and praise for all the blessings which grace our lives, not the least of which is this wonderful community in which we live. Make us ever mindful that it is you who give strength and purpose for well-lived lives. Thank you for the food we will share and for those who prepared it. We ask for wisdom for the leaders of our community, our state, and our nation, that freedom can prevail forever and ever. Be with us, and we thank you and praise your holy name. Amen.
Okay, you can be seated. Joanne's going to lead us in the song Lafayette. Do you all have song sheets? Paul, can you pass out some more song sheets?
We need a song sheet. Okay. Is this yours, maybe?
So that's ours.
Oh. Put it on the end of the table. I couldn't have it on my machine.
Joanne is going to sing it through once, so you get it.
I learned about a year ago, I have to insert myself. We sang it, we learned it last year, and you know, just I looked at it again about 5 minutes ago. Here we go. Many roads and travels far, many roads and travels far, there are many roads I never will forget, but the one that's best of all, and along that I recall, is the road that takes me back to Lafayette, Lafayette, California.
see you here, and we appreciate your support. One of the most important things, of course, was the food and the setup here, and we owe Dick Johnson a tremendous hand for year after year. He threatens to quit every year. We try to keep him on the straight. Now, we want to acknowledge some of his helpers, Jim Sturman, Ollie Hammond, Harold Zilke, who did the flowers, by the way, Keith Blakely, and Paul Sheehan are the ones who organized the setup here. And then the kitchen helpers are Francis Sheehan, Virginia Hammond, and Irene Van Overveen. So, I'm not going to introduce all the people at the head table because Keith, who's our program chair, will do that. But I would like to point out that Lois Lane is here and is the one who is handling the artifacts, the memorabilia, whatever. And she will still be here at the conclusion of the meeting and would like to see you. She'd like to have you buy some of her wonderful products. Dorothy Walker's here. She's running around somewhere with the book, and I know she'd like to have everyone sign the guest book. So if you haven't already done so, please do it. We're doing this at all the sesquicentennial. Gee, I can still say sesquicentennial. Is that it? A few other things I'd like to point out is there are some displays up here. This banner you've seen on the town hall, and I go back out, but it appears at all of our sesquicentennial events. There are a couple of other displays. One, the historical highlights of Lafayette, back here, and then over here, the significant events in Lafayette during this sesquicentennial year. And I invite you to take a look at those. And then a very important display is the one here in the middle. As you may or may not know, the third grade classes in all of the Lafayette schools have a history unit which deals with the history of Lafayette. And they do such a wonderful job. Of course, with the help of, who is that? Elam Brown? Elam Brown. Ray Peters appears at those events, and the children are just thrilled. And they learn a lot about the history. In fact, I think we could profit by going to some of these classes and learn a little more about the history of Lafayette. So those are the things that needed to be taken care of. I have one announcement. A sesquicentennial event put on by the Friends of the Lafayette Library. This is on Thursday, May 21st at 7:30. Elam Brown will be there. And I'm not sure about all of the events that are going on. Is the Friends of the Library representative? Yeah, do you want to say anything more about it?
Just that we will have Elam Brown, and you should draw a great crowd. Please come.
I'm sure it'll be a great event. It is one that didn't get on the schedule here. So don't forget, Thursday, May 21st at 7:30 p.m. at the Lafayette Library. Unfortunately, we have to conduct a little business because this is the annual meeting of the Lafayette Historical Society, and our bylaws say that we must conduct some business. So we'll make it as brief as and as painless as possible and get on with the program. The first thing I'd like to call Ollie Hammond to report on the nominating committee. Ollie? and make your report.
Thank you, Bill. As you know, the Board of Directors is divided up into 3 groups, and one-third of the board is re-elected each year for a term of 3 years. So after a lot of deliberation, we have nominated the following directors for re-election. This year, Nancy Flood is here, I'm sure. Wave your hand, John. And Gary Wilcox.
He's not here.
He couldn't be here. He couldn't be here this year.
He's not here tonight. Job Van Overveen, our cameraman, and Tom and Janice Titmus here. So they are nominated for re-election for the new term.
Thank you, Ollie.
I make a motion that we accept the report of the nominating committee.
I second. Thank you. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ray, are you opposed?
No, I move the nominations be closed.
Was too late.
Not Elon Brown.
Not Elon Brown, he's slow.
Now, we could go on, yes.
And further, I make a motion that we cast a unanimous ballot for the candidates. Second.
Okay, a unanimous ballot. Second. What do we do now?
Yay.
Yay.
Ask call for the vote.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? How about abstentions? We gotta make this legal. I'd like to have Paul Sheehan make a little report on the status of our treasury hall. And also, I would like to tell you that there are annual reports there at the table. If you didn't get one, be sure and pick one up. This saves a lot of time, so all the board members don't have to come up here and make their reports. It's all down in writing, and you're welcome to take one per family. So, Paul, maybe you can help us hand them out.
We can do that, yes. Okay, our net worth here, total resources is $20,221. In the Fern Powell Davis account, we have $10,053, and the operating account is $9,255. Let's see. Out of our operating account, we have $98.20, which is to be given to the sesquicentennial. Sometimes when people pay their dues, they'll send in money for the fire engine, for their dues, and also for the sesquicentennial. So that account is kept separate. We did keep the sesquicentennial funds up until March, and in March they established their own account, and so in March we sent them a check for $3,196, and so they have that. The fire engine account has $911.87 in it, and a little bit more on the fire engine account. Our baby may need new wheels and new tires this year, so I'd like to encourage you all to give some money to, specifically to the fire engine account. I'd also like to appeal to people who are life members. There are quite a few people in the room that are life members, to just don't stop with that life membership. Keep on giving. Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
Speaking of the fire engine, we have some very special guests here tonight, and George Watson's going to introduce them. But first, I would like to, you've seen the fire engine out here. It's covered with a blue tarp. You can peek underneath. It's in running condition, and it is beautiful. It does need some more work, but it does run for the first time in some time. And this is largely due to the told the old joke of why do firemen wear red suspenders. He never told me the answer to that.
Why do they wear suspenders?
Yep.
Red suspenders.
Why do they answers?
Yeah, somehow.
These are
Just thank you. Take this. Thank you very much, George. You can.
my daughter helped me with my computer. You know, they're smart. The computer is smart. I had to get her to do this because I don't know how to do it. But anyway, we have created a diploma or a certificate ordered from the Lafayette Historical Society, the Order of the Red Suspender. This one happens to be awarded to me for services above and beyond the call of duty in the restoration of Old Betsy, the fire engine. Now, for your information, these are authentic fireman's red suspenders. The reason that I got them was that I happened to be down at the Safeway store one day, and the fireman was down there, and I said, "Do you guys still wear red suspenders?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "I need to get some of them," and he gave me a catalog, and so I've ordered a whole bunch of these. The order, and I'm going to do this fast because I don't want to take any more time from our dignitary. Fire engine first came to our attention way back in about 1975 or 6 or something like that. Sure, maybe. Anyway, well, the fire engine was around a long time, but it was discovered first of all in a junkyard out in Pleasant Hill by John Callio, and I'll come to that in a moment. But the first guy that helped a whole lot with this was Hub Anderson. Hub is an expert on, he's one of the world's greatest experts on fire engines and on Model Ts, and we award to Hub Anderson the Order of the Red Suspenders. Here's the box, and inside of this, you make guess what's in there. I'm trying to do this in the order of the people that contributed to it. The fire engine broke down one time, and I needed one of the world's best mechanics to work on it, and I got Charlie Cleland, who happens to be the husband of my wife's cousin, but here Charlie really did a great job. The first time we had to do the drive shaft. Next, we decided we had to do a lot of repair work, and Marshall Duncan said, "Let's get it done." And Marshall is the great deteriorator. He came up one day and took, with his pliers and saws and everything, we took all the fenders off, all the running boards. He did it all in one day. It was the hottest damn day in July. And here's yours. Again, I needed somebody who was particularly good at woodworking, and I got my former neighbor, Roger Peterson, who used to be in Lafayette but lives now in Vacaville, and Roger did all of the running boards. Then there was very little progress being made, but all of a sudden we found that there were some Model T experts in the area, and John Callio was one of them. John is a pilot, and he's one of those guys that flies to long, faraway places, but when he's home, he has some time to spend. And he came up and did a lot of work on the fire engine. John Callio found the fire engine first, called it to Bob Fisher's attention, and we finally acquired it. Now,
I didn't wear a belt tonight, so I've been waiting for this.
All right. Then one of the world's experts on Model Ts, Lee Volkwartzen, and Roger Peterson can tell me I don't pronounce that quite correctly, but Lee did more things. Now, the fact is that these red suspenders will hold up their pants, but they are a very short measure of the amount of time that most of these folks have spent in restoring the fire engine. It's running now, and we hope it'll be running for a long time. Thank you very much.
Very clever, George.
Thank you, George. Do any of the other committee chairs or board members feel impelled to make a report other than what's in the report, annual report? Yes, Marshall?
Normally, I don't have much to say. But I do want to say a couple of things in regards to the upcoming events in the Sesquicentennial calendar. We're going to have a Jenny Bickerstaff plaque. Ed Stokes from the Diablo Foods has really prompted this stuff. Down there at the end, we're really working on this. We are going to have a Jenny Bickerstaff plaque, and we'll have a day for that. On May the 30th, concert at the Res. We're not too involved with that, but we are involved. On July the 4th, Sue Cross is coming up with a tremendous Independence Day at the park, out at the new baseball park out by the community theater. It's going to be just about an all-day affair. Bring the family, bring the grandchildren, and everybody come, because it's a tremendous day on 4th of July. On July the 12th, the Concourse de Elegance. On September the 19th and 20th, the Arts and Wine Festival, which we had for a few years. But this year, we're going to have a parade. And George Wasson is the co-chairman with Judy Garvin. We're going to have a parade starting in the morning. And we haven't had a parade in Lafayette for several years. So we want you all to remember that in the Art and Wine Festival. On October the 8th, we're involved with the Citizen of the Year. On October the 10th, a Taste of Lafayette. What is a Taste of Lafayette? We are trying to develop something with the restaurants in Lafayette, and it'll be an elegant affair, it'll be an evening affair, it'll be a costly affair for each individual, but it'll be money that's going into a good cause. October the 25th, the Reservoir Run. November the 20th, the Community Thanksgiving Breakfast, which we have every year. And then after that, toward the end of the year, we're going to have an appreciation day for all of the volunteers that have worked on this program. And then we have one more new one. A quilt. We're coming up with a quilt for the Lafayette the quilt, yeah. 150th anniversary. And all of the schools are participating in this, and we want anyone that would like to do this, participate in this, and make a square for the quilt that we're going to have. And this quilt that we're going to have, and like I say, all the schools are participating in this, and what is it, the patch up here, the cotton patch is going to help us on this, and we're going to display this quilt, believe it or not, in the new library and the new museum when this is finished. Any of you ladies that would like to get involved in this, I've got the information here, and we can give you the information, and you can make a square for our quilt.
Thank you, Marshall. Yes.
I don't know if I'm out of order, but George Wasson gave out these wonderful awards, and I think we should all thank George Wasson for taking care of Betsy all these years and having Betsy at his house.
We ought to thank June. She's up with the
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, June, you're included.
Thank you. Are there any more reports to come before the body? No?
Bill?
Yes, Ollie.
I might like to give one more accolade to our president, Bill Somerton, who has been so active in this display, the historical display on the corner of Lucky Store, and he has change those displays from time to time and add it to the community interest, and I hope that you have observed those from time to time. But Bill is the prime mover behind that, and we have to congratulate him.
Okay, I'm going to, unless there are other, yeah, well, I want to turn it over to you. You can combine your report with. Oh, okay. Yeah. Just a reminder to the board of directors, there will be a brief meeting following this program. We need to elect the officers. You see, you as members elect the members of the board, but the board elects its own officers. And so immediately after the adjournment, will you please gather over here in this corner and we'll have a quick election. Thank you. I'd like to now turn it over to Keith Blakeney, who has a report to make, and then he will introduce our guest for the evening.
Thank you, Bill. And, is the microphone working? I don't think it's working. It's off. No wonder it's not working. Just help me turn it on. I want to welcome everybody for coming tonight. It's really good to see you on this beautiful spring day. You're all enjoying the weather. Spring day, yes. A couple of things I'd like to take care of here. Bill mentioned that I would introduce the people at the head table, and of course I'll introduce our speakers for tonight. But I'd also, and Bill has already introduced Lois Lane, the public relations chairman for the Lafayette. She's the chairman of the Public Relations Committee of the Lafayette Sesquicentennial. And I'd also like to introduce another person sitting at the head table here on my right, Carol Luziski, who's a relatively new member of the association. And she's sitting up here because a very interesting coincidence took place today. She happens to be a cousin of mine, and I never knew her. I never knew she existed. I met her here 3 hours ago when we were getting ready for this evening, and it was only by virtue of her mentioning her mother, who I know, through the Orinda Historical Society, by the way, that I realized that we were related, and we never really knew each other existed. And the reason for that is because of a divorce in the family somewhere with toward the family asunder, of course. Anyway, Carol is my newfound cousin. I'd like to thank Marshall for making an announcement about all the upcoming events of the Lafayette Sesquicentennial. And just so you'll know that your program committee has been busy during the last year, I'm going to just briefly mention some of the things that we have had. Maybe I shouldn't bother with it. Is that? Yeah.
No,
let's forget it.
Just leave it down there. That's just enough.
Okay. It's kind of a security thing, though. I kind of like waving it around. I guess I can still do that. I just wanted to mention some of the things that we've done over the last year or so that have been interesting events. And one of the reasons I want to mention them is because if any of you have not been availing yourself of these opportunities, I want you to feel guilty about it, and I want you to feel like you've missed something, because we've really had some good things going on. Of course, beginning with our last annual dinner, we had an excellent speaker here, and probably a lot of you seem to come to the annual dinners, and but maybe miss everything in between. So those of you who were here a year ago probably remember Bill Cahill, who was with the Oakland Museum of California, and the very interesting program that he presented about 3 of the Gold Rush characters and how their lives turned out. Then, that was in May. Then in June, we had a very interesting tour to the John Muir House in Martinez, which probably a lot of people feel a little ho-hum about since it's so close at hand. However, we had a great trip. The director and park ranger, David Blackburn, who runs the site for the park department, was our docent and guide, did a great job. And following the tour of the house, we, on a beautiful June day, went out to the apricot orchard. The apricots were just perfectly ripe. There's a picnic area out there. We sat down in the picnic area and had a great picnic lunch, really kind of a feast. And while we were sitting there eating our lunch, a character started wandering across the orchard in our direction. And do you know who it was? It was John Muir. He came to visit us, and we had a wonderful chat with him for a long time, much longer than we thought we were going to get, as a matter of fact. That John Muir turned out to be a fraud. He was actually an impersonator who does this sort of thing, much like Ray Peters does. No reflection, Ray. I never heard him. In September, we had an indoor program called Take Me Out to the Ball Game, and our speaker for that program was Dick Dobbins, who's just a really outstanding baseball historian, author of a baseball book. And somebody told me just the other day that Dick Dobbins has been unwell. Is it cancer, Nancy?
Yes, he had surgery in March. Is doing better. Is at home. Is getting treatment for another tumor in the lung and 2 more.
Thank you very much. Of course, our heart goes out to Dick. He put on a wonderful program for us. And if any of you know him, be sure and get in touch with him. Give him your best wishes. In about that time, in the fall of last year, we were very busy putting together the Lafayette Sesquicentennial, which we organized jointly with the Lafayette Chamber of Commerce, the City of Lafayette, and the Lafayette Historical Society. That was formed for the purpose of celebrating Lafayette's 150th anniversary, which we've been doing very busily since early on this year. And our first event, of course, hopefully all of you were there, but just in case some of you didn't make it, I'll tell you very briefly about it. It turned out to be immensely successful. The venue was perfect for the occasion. It was an old barn, the Casso family barn, about 70 years old, up Happy Valley Road next to the Happy Valley Elementary School, and serendipitously just a short ways from the spot where we dedicated the monument to Elon Brown. That was at the site which Ray Peters located through his surveying abilities, the site of the original house that Elon Brown built here in 1848, and on the same day of the year, February the 7th, which we held our celebration. One of the things that happened that day was that Ann Groden, the mayor of Lafayette, presented a proclamation from the city council proclaiming that that day would heretofore be known as Founders Day in Lafayette, or henceforth, or whatever the correct word is. So we now have a local holiday. From now on, you may all take February the 7th off. Tell your boss it's a holiday. And we'll all get together and celebrate. By the way, we anticipated we might have about 150 people that day. We really had very little to go on as far as judging the crowd is concerned. But we got up Saturday morning, and if you read your newsletter, you know that or if you were there, you know, it was just probably the wettest day of the whole season. Just a real deluge. And at that point, we figured we'd watch if the volunteers even showed up. But surprisingly, in that horrible downpour, 250 people showed up. And at that point, we were thinking, boy, if the weather had been great, we'd have really had a problem. We had trouble getting 250 people in that barn. So then I don't think Marshall really mentioned the Pony Express Day, but that was the most recent event we had. That was just in April. It was preceded by a dedication of a monument, a Pony Express monument, at the corner of Moraga and Mount Diablo Boulevard. And that was on Thursday. And then on April the 25th, a Saturday, we followed that with a celebration at the Lafayette United Methodist Church, which we all know goes way back to 1850. It was Elon Brown was one of the founders. I knew I would get away with that. And it was a great program. We had a presentation by, is Bob Chandler here, by the way? Sorry, he's not. He became a new member of the Historical Society. He is a validated historian with the Wells Fargo Bank. That is what he does for Wells Fargo. He is their historian, or one of their historians, and he gave us a great review of the Pony Express, which stopped occasionally in Lafayette if they missed the boat in Sacramento. I think with that, we can move on to tonight's program. We're here to talk about museums tonight, and I hope that you'll all have an extra cup of coffee and really get with the program. Museums may sound a little boring, but if you get involved in it, they really aren't. I would like to begin by saying, reminding you all, we are we're a historical society without a facility, and in order to carry out the responsibilities of our mission or the objects of our bylaws, we really do need a facility. I won't go into the details about that because I don't really have time, but there are a number of things that we need to have a building for. Now there are many other organizations and communities like Lafayette who have been faced with this same situation, and they are satisfying and have been satisfying this need. So because of that, we know it can be done, and we can also learn a great deal from these organizations. So we, in the process of working on this, I have talked to a number of different organizations who have been putting together museums and so on. We have received wonderful offers from all of them, offers of help to so that we don't make all the same mistakes that they made. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have two of these people with us here this evening to tell us about their experience in creating the History and Research Center in Moraga. I won't go into that. I'll let them get details about that, but I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Margaret DePriester. Has been a Moraga resident since 1968, and a member of the Moraga Historical Society for probably a good deal of that time. She's been very active in the society, a past president, and currently the chair of the Development Committee for the Moraga History and Research Center. Many of you know Margaret. In her spare time, she's served on the Moraga Town Council and also served 2 terms as mayor of Moraga. Been active in very many other community organizations as well. Our other speaker tonight is Dan Rigo. Dan's a local boy, grew up in Oakland, showed excellent taste and went to the University of California where he studied architecture, and then went to work, had a career with Jacuzzi, and then had another career with the John Hancock by 2 well-known architectural firms. Dan's been a resident of Moraga for 29 years with his family and his wife Nilda, who many of you also know. Nilda is well known because of her contributions to the
like Ally McBeal, and I hope you saw it last night.
Hey, I did for the first time because Dora told me that.
On Channel 2 at 9 o'clock on Mondays. It's a great program. I was told that I should start off with the joke, but most of the jokes that I know are not jokes that I can tell here. I mean, I can tell them at the SIR meeting, and I can tell them at the, well, after a Kiwanis meeting. And by the way, it's okay to have coffee out of a Rotary mug, isn't it? But it does remind me of the Amish gentleman and his young son who visited a mall for the first time in their life, and they were enthralled by all of the things that were going on and all of the people and all the different types of stores that were there, and they got fascinated by this wall that was silver, and the wall kept opening and closing, and they couldn't understand what it was. And the little boy asked the dad, he says, "Daddy," he says, "what's that wall over there that keeps opening and closing?" And the father says, "Well, son," he says, "I've never seen anything like that before in my life." He says, "I honestly do not know what it is, but must be something." And just then this little old lady in a wheelchair rolled up to the wall and pushed a button, and the walls opened up, and she went in and disappeared into this little room. And then the walls closed. And they watched in amazement as the lights above the wall came on, and they saw the arrow go up one way and then down the other way like this. And the walls opened up again, and this 24-year-old young lady walks out. He says to her son, "Son, go get your mother." I guess you want to hear what we're doing or how we did it or where we got started with our, we were starting to call it an archive building, and to us it's archives because that's what we have. We have a lot of stuff stored all over the place, not like you have. If you're not familiar with what we have to work with, if you can imagine 2 of these tables put together and the width and the length, that's the size of room that we have at the Moraga Library. And it's full of files and pictures and drawings and artifacts of all kinds. But that's not all we have. We also have a nice place in St. Mary's College, under the eaves of one of the roofs of the library, that if you're 4'6", you have to walk like this to get into. And it's impossible to even know what's in there. And we decided, gee, wouldn't it be nice if people knew what we had, and if we knew what we had, we could get to it. And 4 years ago now, when I got on the board of directors of the Moraga Historical Society, I did what most new members do, sat back and listened and tried to figure out, you know, what's going on. And every time something new would come up, I felt like the guy that had the poem that says, "They showed me a job that couldn't be done, and laughingly I went to it. I tackled a job that couldn't be done. You know what? I couldn't do it." So every time we came up with something, everybody would say, "I've been there, we've done that, it didn't work, well, they won't work, they won't do that anymore." And it wasn't until I became president last year that I found out that we had a committee that had been working on an archives place. And they had figured out that we could add it on to the library in Moraga. And this was a neat place to do it. And they even went out and they drew some plans on their own, and they had this whole plan that this is what we're going to do. We're going to have an archive for Moraga that'll give us some room. And the first thing I said was, "Has it been approved by the board?" "What do you mean approved by the board?" I said, "Well, does anybody in the board besides the 3 people on the committee know what you've been doing?" "No, but we think it would be a good idea." Okay, that's fine, but why don't we get an action to the board, and let's make sure that that the board knows what we're doing so we can work on it properly. And besides that, it would cost us about $5,000 to get the plans drawn up so that we could show it to the town, and the town could approve it. And if you know anything about Moraga, you know that the one thing that we're known as is the process is the biggest job that we have. Want to do anything in Moraga, plan on 6 or 7 years just to get it through the council and then be all right. So, about that time, Margaret came on the board, and I said, okay, we can do it. If that's what we have, if we've got the plans, and if you said that the town has given us a tacit approval of what we want to do, let's go ahead and go ahead with it. Well, I don't know about that. I don't know if it'll work. I said, well, let's forget that. I need somebody to head up a committee. And I looked at Margaret, and I said, Margaret, would you like to take over the committee of the fund development, fundraising? She said, I don't want a fundraising committee. And she said, no. I said, okay. So we had another meeting the next month, and I said, Margaret, we'd like you to do the fund development committee. And she had said, fund development is what you should call it. I said, okay, fund development committee. And she says, only if I can pick the people I want. And I want to be able to run it. I says, hey, I found out one thing about being a president. You can delegate and then step away and don't worry about it because you get all the credit and you don't have to do any of the work. And we were lucky that Margaret decided that the Fund Development Committee would be hers, and we had a few meetings at her house. And on October 18th of last year, we started our fundraising for the Moraga Historical Center. It's no longer an archive. It's a historical center for scholars and students alike. And to date, we have, what, $118,000 now. We found out that the building was going to run us about $150,000, which sounds like a lot of money. When you got people when people always say, we did that, we tried that, it didn't work, I've got places to put my money elsewhere. But if you believe it can be done, and if you really and truly want it, you're going to find out that there's a lot of ways you can get to the end that you want to. And I'll turn it over to Margaret, and she'll tell you how the Fund Development Committee really gave us the boost we needed.
We set up a committee to do the fund development, and I think there are about 8 or 10 of us. And not all of them were historical society members. We wanted people who knew the community and knew the people in the community. We had our mayor. Can't hear me? I think, can't you hear me back there? No? We have the mayor and a former council member, and I'm a former council member. Also a gentleman who had done political campaigns and had worked in the corporate field, so he knew that end of it. We also had, a member of the Chamber of Commerce. You gotta get the business community in with you. You gotta get everybody behind you. So we decided that we'd go first for a stress on the membership, see what the membership would donate for us. And this was taken on by 2 of our members, that they sent out letters to all our members, and it was in our newsletter. We need this much money, $150,000. This was our first thing. With our opening kickoff, we sent out a mailer, which was a pamphlet or brochure, which is professionally done and cost us a bunch of money, but we swallowed that, and a lot of our members swallowed it because it was a lot of money, but it was a very good job, and it was mailed out to each registered voter in Moraga. And this has in it a ticket which you can send in to give your donation. One thing we discovered, you mail out to all the registered voters in Moraga, that sounds great, but Bollinger Canyon isn't in Moraga. And there are some other areas that we found that
the president of the society.
He didn't get one. So they missed a few along the way, so we had to pick up some of those. Okay, but we kept going, and after the brochure was mailed out, our former mayor and our committee, Jim Sweeney, organized a telephone committee, and they called all the people that had received these to say, you know, you got these things, and we really would like some donation from you. That was really a big help, but it was a big job, but we did get those volunteers from our membership. Our first community publicity was this, and as I said, another big part of our strategy was the service clubs. We've got lots of service clubs in Lafayette, just as we had. And Dan took on the task of doing the service clubs in Moraga. Got any words of wisdom on that?
Well, the town of Moraga puts out a bulletin that lists all of the area clubs and organizations, the church societies, the townspeople, and all of the committee members and so on. And as the chairman or the person that was supposed to contact all the clubs, I went down the list, and we have a Lions Club, an unmentionable club right here. We have a saying, by the way, in Kiwanis that the Rotary owns the town, the Kiwanis run the town, and the Lions enjoy it. I've been a Kiwanis for 32 years, so I can say that. But the first thing we had to do was to contact all of the service clubs in the area by writing them a letter. I issued a letter asking them for their help. Now, I didn't stop just at the three major, the Seroptimus and the clubs like that. I even found out, I wrote the LMYA, Moraga Baseball Association, the Boy Scouts. I didn't think we'd get anything, but I wanted them to know what we're doing. And we didn't get anything from them. But they know what we're doing, and we might have got it on an individual basis. You know, you don't want to miss any of the bases around there. So the Women's Society gave us a good amount of money. The Welcome Wagon said, that's fine, we'll tell people you're doing it, but we'll tell them you're welcome. The Moraga Playhouse, they said, good, we need money too. The Moraga Park and Recreation Foundation said, we're a foundation, but we don't give to another foundation. But I did write a letter to every one of them, and then followed every one of them up with a phone call, and then asked if I could have time on their meeting schedule, either at a board meeting or at a general meeting. And all I needed was 5 minutes to tell them what we're doing, show them the $5,000 brochure that we built, we did here, and tell them we need our money back, so you've got to give us some so we can cover the cost. And you'd be surprised how well we've done, and it's really nice when you can tell one service club that, hey, you know, this service club over here gave us $500. How much could you do? I think you're better than they are. And so you get a little bit more from them, and you go back to these people and say, well, you know, they gave $200 more than you did. And, but it works, and it's a lot of fun. And you have to be sort of nuts like me and very shy, otherwise it doesn't work. But that was my job, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And if that was only a part of it, but we were able to raise a lot of money through the service clubs. Not only that, we hope they'll help us do some of this, the building and the work that's inside it. But that's one of the things.
It's really become a community project. We have now, all the service clubs in Moraga have contributed. And I think really everybody is very interested in the completion of this project, which is what you've got to do to get support. You have to have the support of the whole community. It became apparent, however, that you're not going to get $150,000 from the community. You got to get some big bucks from somebody. So I took on the job of grants. I had never done a grant, but the St. Mary's College grant department, proposal department, had offered to help us. And I worked with them and wrote my first one, and they went through it and sort of critiqued it. And so I went on the internet, and there was a short course in writing grant proposals. So I did that. There's also on the internet a whole list of foundations and who they give to and what their criteria are and how you apply and where you apply. It's wonderful, I tell you. So I did that, and I wrote grant proposals to everybody you can imagine. But it is apparent that Historical Society doesn't qualify for a whole bunch of grants. We are not really benefiting the lower element of society, the underprivileged. We are helping the community, but you got to stretch it a bit. So our largest grant at this point, we did get a $15,000 grant from the Dean and Margaret Lesher Foundation, for which we're eternally grateful. But we still have some others. I wrote to corporations. We did the businesses in town. I've written to, you can't believe, the home office of TJ Maxx. BFI did give us some money. TCI didn't. I've written them a second letter trying to bug them to write. They didn't even answer my letter. So those are what I've learned. If you want a grant, the best thing is to find somebody that is part of that company, that corporation, or that foundation, and get through them. That wasn't true in the Lesher, I would say that. We did that on our own. But for corporate foundations, unless you know somebody that has an inside track, it's very difficult. But once you've learned the foundation, the grant proposal, and I'd be willing to help anybody in this group that takes it on, it's kind of becomes fun. You write one letter and then change the names to protect the innocent and so forth, and go from there. But we've done very well, and our first our fundraiser was our annual meeting last October. And as many of you know, Maggie Skinner has been the archivist for the Moraga Archives for many years. Her husband is the CEO of PG&E, and they made our annual meeting by contributing $5,000 at that point for our archives. And of course, this was in recognition of Maggie's service. And this helped us with our kickoff. But we are still continuing to work through the community. I